All right, it is 7 o'clock. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We skipped roll call, sorry.
Shall I do that now?
Might as well.
Okay. Arnold? Here. Beckwith? Here. Barkapisi?
Here.
Hamilton? Here. Katsinas?
Here,
Sutton?
we have a quorum. All right, unfinished business, space audit review and discussion. That's what we're here for, let's talk about it. So what do we want to talk about for the space audit, and what do we want to talk about for bringing in a potential architect?
Well, I think we should go through the points they have, say if we even are interested in doing those things. I've gone through and made my notes, and what's higher priorities for us, and what are things we don't want to do at all. I mean, the more I think about it, and I stood outside looking where they want to move the door, like, that just doesn't make sense. The awning doesn't, I mean, that type of thing. I mean, and that was your observation, George, which I think was excellent. But, you know, I'm just went through and made my notes, so I think we should go through and discuss at least the larger points that what's important to staff and.
Maybe go through the short and long term and rank them.
So let's start with short-term recommendations. We've got a, we don't have a whiteboard. That's okay, we don't need a whiteboard. So cafe seating.
Can I give a little, before we get started,
Yes,
let me
go
give a
ahead.
little context to the report, just as a refresher. So what David Vinjamuri, who put together this report, what his process was, is he spent 2 days with us. And he came in and, you know, he quietly would, you know, set up shop, like be at a table in the library or be in a study room, and he would observe how people use the library, different parts of the day. So it was, you know, a observational study. And he also spent time and had these little focus groups with staff, mainly public service staff, and he asked them, you know, what do you see here happen at the library? So his recommendations are based upon what he knows of best practices, but in addition, what he observed in the library, how people use our space, and feedback from staff about how we see the patrons use our space. So I just wanted to put that context in. So, and I have notes too, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that is in the report or how he put it in here, but all these recommendations are based on his visit. So there's a reason for these recommendations, and if the board needs clarity on what the thought process was behind them, I'm happy to provide that, or Kathy's happy to provide that. So.
I think that would be helpful for all the items, honestly. If you could put them in context, that would be helpful.
Yeah, as we go, you mean?
Yeah.
Mhm. And I like that he listed them in order of priority that he thought were the most problematic, I guess. Short term, long term, so we start with Kathy.
So I mean, cafe seating, signage, and information desk are all things we kind of need. Does anybody disagree?
Explain again cafe seating. It's on the hard surface, I know.
Yeah. So when you come into the library, you know, as he talked about here, observe that different times of day, different people, you kind of need that when they come to the library. Whether it's the example he gives, the caregivers with infants, toddlers, seniors midday, teens in the afternoon. So that, you know, as you come into the library, you have the welcome desk, and then you kind of have to navigate through that dark area to get to any seating. So the idea would be to put some, you know, seating right next to the welcome desk, which would be for everybody, not necessarily just a certain group. It would be all ages. So that's the thought process behind that, to have a seating area that's welcoming to people as they come into the building.
And so can you help, I know it's a hard surface place, and we would have to buy furniture for that. And cafe seating is tables and chairs or not overstuffed things or cafe.
Yeah, I don't know if he has any examples of that as
Yeah, I
images,
was trying to
and I don't know
look at
exactly know what that
There's
looks
some
like, but,
pictures.
yeah.
I thought so, but it didn't look anything.
But I'm looking at the layout, which, you know, kind of cuts off half
It does.
the library. but where he's got the cafe seating and game lounge, I'm not convinced about a game lounge, because it has a vault and, you know, flip-flopping the kids' stuff seems to me like a lot of expense, but, and to have a game lounge when it's out in the open and creating noise, well, we have that problem
It's
with
glassed
kids.
in though.
That was intended to be enclosed.
Glassed
Yeah.
in.
But we already have the vault.
Well, one thing I'll say with the game lounge, Andrew, I don't disagree with you. I don't think we need a game lounge there, but I think of it as like what I'm calling the flex forward, the way I think about it, because what he's proposing in essence is, you know, the flex, and this is something that I didn't think about when we did the flex space. It's very far removed from the rest of the building. It's also a safety issue. It was last year, remember that first day the kids were back to school and we decided, well, let's open up the flex for the teens, and that was a big mistake because we didn't have any visuals on that space.
Yeah, right.
So it's a great space, but so if you cross out game lounge and think
Flex.
the flex forward,
Flex, I could go.
that's if we were gonna do anything like that, that's what I would wanna see it to be,
Yeah.
like a programming space, not a gaming
Yeah.
lounge.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But there could be
quote,
games in there.
quote,
Could
game
be,
lounge, but it's
sure.
programming space.
Yeah.
That's what we're
I
talking
think
about.
perception-wise, it may not be truth-wise, but cutting the nonfiction area, what looks basically almost in half, if not in half, is gonna give the perception we cut the collection in half. When we can use that extra space to display books in their rule of 3, but people will perceive that absolutely as cutting the collection in half.
Even though it's mostly open and empty today?
The collection's mostly empty today is the problem.
Yeah.
Well, but you can also use that for display, as he recommended all over the place, that, you know, if he said it 25 times, I don't think I would be understating, you know, the rule of 3s, and that can be used to display books, which then keeps them out of the library.
Part of the problem, though, is that our current stacks aren't really set up for that type of display. He's talking about more mobile displays,
Mhm.
lighter
Right, but
weight
we
displays.
don't have the money for that right now. We gotta work with what we've
Well,
got.
what do we have money for, and how do we
That's
know we
how
don't
we
have
have to
money for that is the
decide,
point.
right.
Today is what we're gonna
Because a big part of this project is to come up with actual budget numbers for these things.
Yeah.
But people will absolutely perceive that there's fewer books.
Maybe we
Well,
can
part of it
educate
too,
them.
I remember when we walked through the stacks, was that,
decide.
yeah, they're empty, but also there were
Kids.
multiple copies
Yeah.
of things that we don't, now that we're in CCS, we don't need that so many, right?
That was
Right,
the
duplicates.
idea.
yeah, it's so, with the size of the collection, in terms of the number of volumes we have, we want to have a lot of books in our collection. We're always going to have a lot of books. And I think when people talk about number of books, the biggest thing has been the new books, like new fiction books specifically, because people notice when we joined CCS, and I think when people talk about that, that's what they're talking about. Because we used to keep our new books and a lot of new fiction for 6 months, and when we went to CCS, we went by their rules, and so it's 3 months. So basically, things are out there for 3 months, and then anyone else can place a hold on them. That means that a book that's been sitting there, and it's not like the new bestsellers that are new. There's a queue for those multiple copies holds on those parts of the collection. It's like a new book, maybe like a new fiction author that hasn't just taken off. They don't know who the author is, but somebody does in CCS, and so somebody from Evanston is like, oh, I'm going to place a hold on this book and get it sent to Evanston, and so that gave patrons the perception that like, oh, we're not buying as many new books. I don't, like, we have not heard anything about the nonfiction collection. We've been weeding, and the stuff we've been weeding from nonfiction is just stuff that, I mean, like, there's some books back there, I'm like, have you seen that bin of like the dog books, like
Oh, stuff
puppies
that
and
just hasn't
It's-
served in
It's
years.
gross, it's old, it's not,
Yeah.
it's just not stuff that's gonna check out, or even sell in the book sale for
Or
to be
even the
honest.
travel books.
So,
If
So I
we
agree, like,
cut
we wanna have
this-
strong collections.
If we cut it,
Yeah.
we are going to have to do some sort of campaign so that people
Explain.
know that we haven't cut the
Yeah.
collection. We're just making
Yeah.
more efficient use of, I would
But
have
if
to.
it's moved, I don't think it'll resonate quite as much with people if it's somewhere else.
But it's in the same spot, there's just less of it.
And I think,
There's-
we've already done this heavy weed, so once they shift, then it won't look so bare.
Empty.
Yeah.
Did
So-
we do the heavy weed for it to be permanent, or did we do the heavy weed because we were anticipating, increasing the collection in the future? Was this a?
We're in the midst of doing the heavy weed now, basically because of CCS, and
Mhm.
it gives us a better idea of really what our needs are and what's going out and what isn't, so.
And what I would say is, I read almost exclusively nonfiction. And, like, once people know about CCS and how easy it is to get records in the libraries, it's so much better than when we were standalone.
I was surprised how
Yeah.
quickly I got books. I
Yeah,
was-
yeah. So, but I think you're right. I think we need to continue to do a better job of educating our patrons on like how great it is and getting them comfortable with able to, place holds. Because if standalone WNPL a couple years ago, nonfiction collection versus we have less of it, but we have, we're 7.5 million items in CCS. It's really remarkable. But yeah, so I think your concerns are valid, but when I've been talking to people, it's like new fiction, that perception that we are not earning as much, and we are. It's just after 3 months, if something's still sitting there, it's going to go to the library to fulfill. So.
And something else to think about is he did mention moving the teen collection to the space behind this cafe seating. And the teen collection has already been moved by the mural. So we had also been talking about perhaps moving large type then up there, which would be closer for people that need it, instead of having to, traipse all the way back here. So that's
Yeah,
another option.
I think that's a good idea, because there are a lot of, well, I need large type. I'm perfectly able to walk, but I can see why that would be definitely beneficial to people who have mobility issues.
Yeah, it's far to walk back here, if you do have mobility issues. And we
Yeah.
saw that when we were doing the HVAC project, and we were all up there, and people would kind of comment that it's far to go back here for computer help or reference help or whatever.
No, Brian, are they planning to enclose the cafe seating area, or would that be open space?
That was
But
open.
the noise.
Yeah, I think whether this is a concept, I think its concept is open, yeah.
Well, I question hard
Noise.
floors then.
It's
The
supposed to be for
carpet would-
food though, and, right?
Well, we don't really have heavy food in the library anyway.
No,
No, but you got cups of hot coffee.
right.
But that's all over the library.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would definitely be easier to keep
But it's not allowed
clean.
without lids.
Keep clean,
Yeah.
right.
It really depends on the flooring that
Or what
we
we-
choose though, because you can have hard flooring that is sound dampening as well.
I do like the idea of cafe, the idea of a place to come and sit down like that when you first walk in.
Yeah. We used to have the living room area where the
Uh-huh.
information desk is now.
Mhm.
That's where everybody used to go.
Yeah.
That hasn't been there in a while.
Well,
We
and this
need
is a nice
some-
idea
yeah.
for like families to take the kids' winter coats off or whatever. It's a good stopping spot.
You know, when you bring that up, I just thought, what if there was like lockers to lock their coats in, and they didn't have to drag them all over?
Lockers give us other headaches though.
All right, so,
I have to police the
How
lockers.
are we prioritizing or
Yeah.
making decisions then, or yes, no, keep moving?
I think we're doing a yes, no to start with, but I mean, we've done some minor edits, like Game Lounge, we're just gonna not call Game Lounge.
Have we crossed anything off?
I don't think we've crossed it off, but we've
I think-
redefined
I
it.
think the teen collection, should be large print,
where it is on here, you mean?
yeah.
I'm not sure if it's necessarily gonna be,
I think that might be too prescriptive at this point,
Yeah.
because I think we're just trying to align on concepts and what we want to prioritize, and then leave it to the
Deal with
experts
it.
to
yeah.
The
puzzle
details
piece
are
it
for
together.
them. Yeah. So do we want to put a number system, or do we want to say yes to this, no to that?
Let's go with yes, no, because
Okay,
again,
we gotta get,
we will prioritize when we actually know what the dollar signs
what-
are.
okay, good point. All right, so cafe seating, yes?
Yes.
All right. Signage?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer.
Information desk, yes, we definitely need recommendations on the information desk.
Yeah.
The game lounge, which it's really programming space, but we can call it game lounge to have a placeholder.
I like the flex forward or something like that.
Whatever we wanna,
The
Because-
game lounge has like a Vegas kind of
Yeah.
Yeah,
feel to it.
yeah. I mean, because, and I think with the changes we made to the vaults, kind of in essence, part of that's turned into sort of game
Yeah.
lounge. So and that's working really well, so.
yeah, so if we were to, rather than game lounge, call that the Flex,
Mhm.
Flex Mark II, whatever you wanna call it.
Okay, so yes?
But just rename it programming space
Yeah.
instead of game lounge.
Yes.
Marketplace, I think we definitely need that,
Yes.
Especially the lights.
yes.
And then moving the team collection, that's something.
Well, it's not so much moving, but yeah,
I think that's been done
moving it.
already.
We've started moving it, we've moved parts of it,
Right,
but we've moved it into two separate spaces right now.
yeah, that's
So half of it's sitting in front of the big
like.
mural,
Yeah,
and half of it's in this aisle over here.
yeah, that's not good.
And that move was always intended to be temporary, just so we could get the vaults settled. Yeah, so there are certainly downsides to where those collections live.
Yeah. So we definitely need them to tell us where to put it that will work better,
Yeah, and keep it fresh.
and maybe even talk about how we can optimize the teen room. Dual-purpose storytime room,
I do really like that idea.
okay.
I mean, I don't think that's gonna be expensive either. We've already
No.
got the door there.
The door's there, it's just a matter of making it
And
more
tell me the
accessible.
reason for that other door, so that you can enter not from the children's space, is that the idea?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm sure it was originally there for fire safety or something. We just really just gotta, we could start using it right away for programming.
yeah, it just needs to be cleaned up a bit.
So that's a yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
is there
and-
any
and
carpet change or anything that needs to,
It probably needs a refresh,
The carpet.
the
Ryan, what
carpet,
kind of carpet's in there now?
the furniture.
Yeah, it's like, it's,
kids-
what
kids
is the
furniture,
carpet? It's
isn't
like.
It's green and blue, it's
yeah.
kitty.
Yeah,
you
kid,
know.
like kid
Yeah.
pattern, yeah.
It's more the furniture than the carpet that we'd need to look at. We talked about maybe moving the furniture from the Flex there.
Yes, right. Yeah, no, we definitely would need the furniture for adults to use the space, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, it could work.
So it'll be hopefully cheap, but
And we need the dual entry because we're not gonna get traffic of adults through Coco's Cove.
because as an adult going into there, you'd have to go through the entire children's
Children's
area,
section,
yeah.
then through the young kids area, then to the back of the young kids area, then into this room, which is a little less than easy to find.
We would.
But so is the other door that we exited, that's tucked way in the back.
We would need signage.
Signage.
Yeah.
We need signage.
Yeah.
Would you send them both ways, or?
You would send,
Well, those
well,
adults come through it.
having multiple ways to get into a room is always good, especially because for an adult program, you don't want the group of adults traipsing through the children's area, and for the children's program, you don't want
Going
a bunch of
into
toddlers
the-
going through all the,
Just lock the door.
yeah.
One thing that we could do to help people find things, which we haven't done, is, cut colored strips into the floor like they do in hospitals. Follow the blue line
Well,
to
I think that was
pediatrics.
one of the suggestions, something about color, what.
Goes into signage, so yeah.
Signage, yeah,
Yeah.
which I think is.
Signage and direction.
Sorry, does anyone have an extra pen? Mine just ran out of.
Pardon?
Sure.
No,
There you
that's
go.
right. We can hang on
The
to
yellow
it.
one, but
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
thank
see
you.
much of it.
Whoa.
Everybody,
Sorry.
Hey, yeah, 5 extra.
Come on, we're board
It's
members.
like
We
that
can work
movie,
on that.
that movie from,
Here, I'll take that. I took her other pen.
My
Oh.
copyright clearance center pen finally ran out of ink.
All right.
Okay.
Children's. This is a bigger part of the
Yeah,
project.
it is.
I do think it's a good part of the project.
I really have always been disappointed with Coco's Cove. One of the things they talk about was getting taller shelves. Well,
Some of those kids.
within Joe and I's tenure, we replaced taller shelves with the shorter shelves so that children could access them themselves. And that was expensive, but Coco's Cove looks very industrial. It doesn't look like kid-friendly. I don't know that we have to do big moving walls, which was one of their recommendations and things like that. I think we could just really make better use with decor, or, we had one time talked about putting a mural above the top. And we actually thought our high school students were gonna do that, but that never came
We
to
were close,
fruition.
sort of.
Yeah, well, their advisor never.
Yeah,
Never
yeah.
came through.
Like, she was talking about it, but then never came through, or he. I can't
He
remember
was
if it
told
was
me.
he. And, but I think we could use that space more efficiently without moving everything to the other side. And that seems like a lot of expense when we've already got, we built the point for our tweens. We
Well,
built
what he
the
was
bar.
talking about in this phase of children's doesn't actually involve a lot of expense. Because this was not so much moving walls or anything as it was moving around shelving.
Yeah.
But
The biggest
we-
expense here is the interactives.
Right.
But if we do this like the first time, rather than doing what he's proposing in the long-range plan,
So, yeah, let's talk about children's for a minute. Children's is gonna be a two-phase, I think, regardless. The one option of moving children's out to that side of the library seems a bit big for me. I think there's some downsides there, at least that's, it's not that, I'm gonna try to explain what I'm thinking. It's both big and small at the same time, because it's thinking too small, because you're forcing yourself to stay in the current footprint. But thinking too big and let's move around these giant blocks. So you have to do major renovation, but you're not really growing.
I think his main focus was the noise and the sound
Exactly.
and the distraction of
One
it
way.
being there and people had to watch. So that's why I liked his idea. When
I
you
like
come
the,
into
I
left,
like the
go to
idea of separating, but
Yeah.
there
It's
are
a lot.
other ways to think about that, and maybe one of the things that you can study in this longer phase, and we're not talking about that yet, but let's talk about it anyway, is what other approaches could we have for better isolating children's?
we hired designers to design the vault,
Mm-hmm.
which we're now updating. We hired designers to design the point for our tweens,
Mhm.
which, you know, we've kind of moved away from the original design. Maybe we should go back to the original design. But we've never hired designers for the Cobos Cove area, and I think we got, what was it, a huge donation for that. And the only thing we spent the donation on was the sign. We never spent any of that money on Cobos Cove itself. And when I say big donation, what was it, Joe, 60, 80, $100,000? It was a
Wow,
lot
also
of money.
quite a bit, yeah.
Really?
It was a great deal of money, and the only thing we did was put the sign and a plaque. So I've always thought that that space has just really not served. When my kids were there were the higher bookshelves, but there was this great chair that I could have, that had arms. I know it was gotten rid of because of kids have accidents, but kids sat here, kids sat here, and I could read to all three of them. They loved the chair. There was the little door within the big door to go into the story time. I don't know what happened to that little door, but my kids loved the
That
little
was great.
door. But now, you know, those things are gone, and it just seems more industrial, that I would rather spend money on making that space so more fantasy-like and, you know, children wanting to read than spending the money on flip-flopping everything around, because it's not too noisy now.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's too
There are ways to do it without having to relocate everything.
We could spend money and just really make Coco's Cove better, cozy. Yeah,
I like
cozy.
Coco's Cove because they're sort of trapped back in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This other one makes me nervous now because they're really close to just sprinting back out the door if they're somewhat unsupervised. And I know I'm supposed to supervise my kids, but sometimes I walk
But you
away
know,
from them
you've
in the
got
library.
more than one toddler. You've got 2 and 3 toddlers.
But and you can see them in Coco's Cove because there's,
You see 'em.
yeah,
I
you-
mean, you can get closer to the door and people come running out.
I like the idea of interactives and large-scale,
Me too.
museum
Me
pieces
too.
where Coco's Cove is. I don't necessarily like the idea of item 1 under long-term recommendations.
Okay, you guys,
We're on 144,
yeah.
140.
144. So you know, if we look at, you know, let's finish up with short-term recommendations. Children's, The children's recommendations that are in here are short-term, low-cost recommendations, talking about basically rearranging shelving.
Right.
I don't think there's a problem with putting that in the quotes. The only big-ticket item there for children's is the museum quality interactives for Coco's Cove.
That big law.
Let's postpone that till you have a plan for that room.
Well, that would be part of the architect.
It would be part of the architectural design, but I think we want to,
That's part of a long-term plan.
well,
That's an expensive.
does it have to
No.
be?
Not necessarily.
Depends on how much we're willing to spend on those
Well, it
parts.
should be created toward the long-term
Exactly.
plan.
And that's the intent of this. This will be a short-term that
And if you
flows
take it
into the
off of
long-term.
one wall and move it to another wall, that can be expensive, or, you know.
We might want to clarify what the short-term recommendation is for children, so
Yeah.
everyone is clear on it. So what he was, so, you know, what, like, and I've always done this too, like, you know, up until really the space audit, you know, looking at library spaces, like zones for different ages, like, you know, like Coco's Cove is for the preschool kids, you know, and the point is for, like, before you get to middle school and high school, and then the vault, middle school and high school. We've always thought that way, and I think, you know, that has made a lot of sense. But what he observed is that in reality, you have families that come in and you've got all ages. You've got, you know, toddlers to teenagers, and not to look at the youth spaces from the lens of like, okay, this space is for this age, this space is for this age. Look at it like different reasons people come and want to use the library. So some people come in and that little part of Coco's Cove, that interactive space, you know, there's a collection, there's that little area, you know, the kids kind of run around, use manipulatives. That's kind of like a very mini interactive space. Then some people come in and sit down and they read books to their children. Some people come in and sit down and do puzzles. And then some people are coming in just looking for items in the collection. So what this proposal is to turn that Coco's Cove space into not just toddlers, it's through elementary age, and it's this interactive play space. Then you've got the area that's the point, which is the focus zone, and that's the place that's intended for families to come in, let's read a book, let's do a puzzle, and then you have the rest of the area where it's the collection for all ages. So just to explain what he was proposing.
But Coco's Cove's not gonna be big enough to do grade school kids and house the books of grade school and toddlers.
Yeah. So what he's proposing is you would take the picture books out of Coco's Cove and put them where the other collections are. So
Do you want to bring up, it's like the next?
Yeah, that's on
Then how do you
page 10.
contain your toddlers?
Well, the idea is that the interactive play would be the place where they're kind of running around and,
They're not totally contained anymore.
yeah.
If you, but in here, I was thinking,
Oh, yeah.
We let you publish.
That makes
because what you were
sense.
describing was just,
Here,
this one, there you go.
I'm gonna bring up this picture.
Is it this one?
No, this is actually from,
So, I guess he does still have that little area, still it's preschool, and then interactive play, then outside
Yeah.
of Coco's Cove,
Board book.
board books. And one thing to point out too, you know, kind of along this conversation, and this is something that, like, we've been talking about, like with the information desk, you know, we've got
I'm
two.
gonna pass this around.
Sure, we've got two.
This is another area library.
Okay, we've got two staff members, and I know there's been some, you know, we've got some comments about like, well, what about having a dedicated youth staff? Notice in this diagram, you've got info desk, you've got stations and youth. So ideally, we'd like to get to a point where at the information desk, at least at times, only have one staff member there, because I don't think we really need two staff members there, at least not at all times. And then have a member in those youth areas, like a dedicated staff member. Right now, I think it's working fine. You know, the reaction we're getting from families is at least like direct interaction. Is that they like the fact like, oh, we get welcome sooner. So we haven't, families with little kids don't seem to have any issues.
Nope.
Families that we've heard from adults that have their kids that are grown up that don't like the changes, but they're not the ones actually using the space. But anyway, I think it would be good to get to a point where at certain parts of the day we have staff in those youth areas. So
The one complaint that we did get, And this was because the information desk is now so far from Coco's Cove.
Mm.
You had a parent, and this was one of the suggestions that came
Unintended
in,
child, yeah, comment, yeah.
Because where the desk used to be, you could duck out and ask the librarian a question about a book
Right.
while your kid is playing with the large interactives or the small
Yeah.
interactives we have, without losing line of sight to your child.
Right,
Now you have to drag your kid out of there, and yes, you would take your kid away from the big toys.
yeah,
To go
yeah.
talk to the
No, I agree,
librarian.
that's not ideal.
But in this, they would be they would be there,
Yeah, I mean,
one, at least one,
this one.
if not two.
I'm sorry.
There would be a youth
Desk.
desk.
Yeah.
And that's something that we also have to get staff comfortable with. I know that, when Rebecca had a youth, when did they go to like one staff member on the desk? Because it was two for a long time.
It was during COVID, I think.
Might have been
you know
during
what I mean?
COVID.
Right,
And
yeah.
so that was an adjustment. I know that, but now that staff are doing the tech help desk by themselves, we're getting staff more comfortable with it, but,
They
you know,
used to
still
have
gonna
like
take some.
another staff person like right after story time to hang out in there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that would be something that would be cool to do, you know, during those kind of programs.
Yeah. So using data to help us with our staffing, if we know we're busy, making sure we have the right number of staff at those locations when we're busy and then when we're not.
Well, there are some families who space their kids 6 years apart, but generally, they're 2 years apart. You know, whether they have 2 children, 4 children is considered a big family now, but usually people have got 2 or 3 children, 2 years apart, so we're talking 2 to 4 years difference from oldest to youngest. And I just think it's really helpful to contain your toddlers in a room. When you've got the interactives in one place and you've got another toddler who wants to look at the books, and now you're torn between 2 toddlers. Or in my case, it was 3 toddlers. And, it's a big job keeping, I loved that they were contained in the toddler room. Then when they got older, I did not need to
Yeah.
have 3 eyes.
Mhm. Yeah.
They'd still, wouldn't they still be contained here? They'd be in
That's
the
what I mean.
pre and the interactive?
Right.
Yeah.
I'd be playing with it all the
Is
time.
there isn't a wall between, like, the children's services and the interactive
This is a
play,
wall.
is there?
Well, there's
But
a,
there, the board books are outside.
the
Yeah.
board books are outside, but they're not far. And
From
it's
the-
less
Little
contained,
kids
it's less
can
contained.
run
Oh, I remember. Believe me, I remember.
Little
Mine were
kids,
runners.
You can't lock the door and keep them from going, and then you've got the other little, 3 little kids at one time or more is big deal. It's hard to do.
If I can suggest though, we're talking about the details of the plan, which is something that's best done with the architect.
Right.
The question that's up right now is, do we want to talk about the children's area having the changes that we're talking about as part of this plan? And I think we do want to make changes to the children's area, at least in the layout, as part of this plan.
Yes.
I don't wanna be moving,
We're not talking about
There is
moving
fine,
walls
but I
yet.
don't wanna be moving walls.
No.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
I
this
won't
one
be
isn't
here in the
there.
future when the new board makes these decisions, but I like kids contained. And, let's hope someday I have grandchildren, and I hope to have lots of them. I would like to contain them.
See, the pictures I was passing around were from the Barrington Area Public Library. The way they've done it, their entire children's area is contained. So there's basically a separating wall around the whole children's department. And then within the children's department, they have zones like this where there's a large interactive play zone. There's cafe seating around that, and then the books surround that. So you can get to all of the books for all of the ages. You can get to a place where you can sit and read the books, and the kids can be over there playing at the same time. And it really works well for the parents, because you've got line of sight to your kids that are playing in the large toddler things. You've got your older kid over there picking out a book, and you're sitting in the middle reading to whichever one wants to be read to.
Yeah, Barrington's a very interesting and cool library. It's very interactive. Maybe too
much.
interactive,
We
honestly.
we don't have
But-
their
but my-
budget.
One in
my-
the interactive is catching the virus to bring home to everybody.
but I took the boys there when they were little a couple times, and they loved
had a
it.
blast,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but I do think there's something to be said, Andrea, and I think you were touching on it. Like, I'm not saying that our youth space is not magical to the kids that come in, but it could be more magical. We can make it better. There's no doubt about that. Because I feel like that's one of our weaknesses, honestly.
There
Fire
used to
truck.
be a boat,
Yeah.
but then you know what happened? The librarians didn't let the kids on the boat.
Well, insurance issues.
First, the kids could get on the boat, and then they couldn't get on the boat, and then the boat disappeared.
Well,
All right.
So are we?
Yes.
So,
saying
yes for
the
children.
Yes, with some, yeah.
With a lot of discussion with our architect when they
Right.
come in.
Right.
New furniture options, I think this is a must-have, because our furniture definitely needs a refresh. That was what started this project.
Yes.
Okay.
What are you waiting for?
The flex becoming a staff workroom.
We're kind of all, at least staff size, we're kind of like, we're not sure what that, right? Like,
Yeah, because
like
they
we're
have to
not-
put a wall,
Yeah, so
you know,
we're,
between, so that this hallway would almost be closed off.
yeah, I mean, maybe, but I honestly, if you said, let's do this, I mean, right now, well, sort of as a staff room, because we do have a lot of meetings in there, but we also have programs, so I don't know about, I'll be honest, I don't know about this
But
recommendation.
if we're talking about moving the flex to
The front,
the front, what happens to that space?
To the block.
that's a good question. I mean, I think we might continue, I mean, we would continue to do staff meetings in there.
You know,
I-
maybe by that time that comes, maker spaces will need more space.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it could always be like a programming overflow.
Yeah, but you wanna make sure we use the spaces
Right.
that
Yeah.
we've got.
So if we want-
And-
so-
But the problem with it is
And-
it's hard to explain to patrons where it is.
Yes.
You know,
It's
like-
so tucked away.
Yeah, because there's really no sight lines to it, there's no signage that you can just say.
We could still do the, you know, the carpet thing that directs people to follow the yellow line.
It could,
To the-
yeah, I'm sorry.
We collected a lot of money in donations for that. It's recent, it's in people's memories. Hey, I donated it, and now it's staff space.
The flex, you mean?
Yeah.
It, it could be meeting room C.
That's
You know,
another
Keeping
option.
it for flex
Yeah.
or
Good.
whatever
Yeah.
could still be
It could be
a
another
possibility
meeting room.
until
Yeah.
Yeah. You
we
could-
come up with a better plan.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
think defining it as a meeting room rather than a staff space would be better.
Right, essentially.
Is it
About the
needed
money.
as
I was gonna
staff
say, do
space?
you need 3 meeting rooms?
Oh,
well,
We
I'll,
always have more demand for meeting rooms.
and yeah, staff between the boardroom, there's this, I call it the interrogation room sometimes. If you've been in this little staff room, like between that room, this room, and the flex, there are times when staff are
Oh,
meeting in all
too.
these spaces.
You know,
So yeah, we use it a lot, but you could still designate it as a meeting room for the public, and staff could still use it, you know.
Yeah.
you can vote.
Yeah.
Say it
And
was
this might
reserved.
sound like a crazy idea, but for signage, it occurred to me, we could have neon signs that you turn on and off for different programs. You know, like if there's a program in in the story room, an evening program for adults that's hard to find, you could have arrows that go, follow the yellow arrow, neon yellow arrows that get turned on for that event, and you could have, you know, neon blue arrows to the flex space for another event, and, you know, they could even, we could make signage is, to me, even though it's expensive, is a much cheaper option than these other things, and this is something that could be creative, and, I mean, if you had a business that were in the story room, you could figure out a way to have people find your
Yeah.
business, if your livelihood depended on it.
So my
Kathy?
So
suggestion,
say no, say, what do you say?
reword this to instead of staff workroom to additional meeting room.
Meeting room.
Kathy,
For staff
any thoughts on
and-
that? Anything to add?
No, I mean, we would have, like I said, we'd have to put up a wall, otherwise, if you have
Yeah.
staff in there, that's like being in a fishbowl, I mean,
Fishbowl,
who'd
yeah.
wanna work?
Yeah,
Yeah, because that's the thing. If you, okay, let's say we're gonna move like the marketing team in there. Well, then they're kind of on an island, and it's
you're
just, it doesn't make a lot of
asking them
sense.
to work full-time with no windows.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. There are people that work full time without
I worked
windows
7
though.
years.
so-
No windows,
Seven
worked
that's
in the
right,
basement
without
of
windows.
32 for 3 years.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
but if that's a reservable meeting room, then it becomes available to the public as well.
Reservable.
Yeah, that's valuable.
And it's a nice size for
Yeah,
that.
it's a nice space to meet.
It can remain the flex.
Exactly.
Flex.
Flex one and
It
flex
could be,
two.
yeah.
Okay.
And then
so-
circulation desk,
Flex and reflex.
Reflex.
This is something I'm like, ideally, would it be good to move that back? I don't think it's a huge issue. That's probably why it's at the bottom of the list, but.
My question was, can we do with just moving the desks, or do we have to move a wall?
We don't have to move a wall, that is.
If it's just moving desks and furniture, then that sounds good.
Yeah, but it's not that simple. It's not like a desk that we just move back. It would take
The
some work.
cabinet.
That's why I'm kind of like, I don't see it's a
It's
huge
a
priority
nice-
at this
it's a
point.
nice thing, but
That's an
not
asterisk,
necessary.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think that
I'm gonna write that.
I mean, I would do it but if I've sacrificed
Money?
something, that would be the thing I'd
Yeah,
sacrifice, you know?
yeah.
So,
So do we want to strike number 11?
Yeah.
Okay.
Circulation desk.
Remove number 11.
Okay.
All right, long-term recommendations. Children's room. I don't like to move it to the other wing of the library. But I do like talk about options for the children's room.
I like the idea of it, yeah.
Because, I mean, maybe we do need an enclosure around the entire children's space.
Mhm.
Of this.
Yeah.
Up on this one, yeah, that's what I was wondering.
I mean, could you put glass walls up?
Something to slow them down,
Exactly.
maybe like a maze. So they can't leave too fast.
So,
I do think this is interesting to move it and have it, I get why, from a design standpoint, you would do that, but it also is gonna be a lot of money, and I'm not sure it's worth
is,
it.
I
Well,
agree.
and it's dark at that end of the
When
building
you walk
too,
in, that's
so,
true.
And then you're like this, if you,
yeah.
If you
leave
wanna
them.
go,
I mean, there's.
Not that you'd
there
ever
wouldn't
do
be
that.
any windows.
yeah.
it just wouldn't maybe have the benefit, effort, yeah.
Well, financially, if you put something here and close them.
And who knows
Sort
how
of
it
the
would
same.
look, you know, when they want to change the entrance, going back to where it actually used, where it was. You know, I mean, maybe if you're gonna be putting up walls and stuff, you might as well put up windows.
Yeah,
Just-
yeah.
so I think it's interesting, but I do worry about the cost. I just can't, I'm not an architect or an engineer, but I just can't see how you could do this without spending a lot of
Lot of
money.
money, lot of money, yeah.
The other thing, and this is, you know, as soon as, I think I need to credit Joe Huberty. I know you said that to me the other day, George, but at least Joe probably said this to me first about like, well, if you move the entrance, then all of a sudden you're asking the adults to go further to enter the adult part of the building. And I know that there, like any public library I've ever worked at, there are two things that patrons want. They want, number one, more hours, as long as you can be open. We could be open 24/7, and the parking. And then even though I think our parking situation is amazing,
It is.
but, you know, to a lot of patrons, that would make a big difference if you move the entrance. So
That much further.
I know a lot of adults would be really salty about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, but I mean, I don't know, if we decided to, you know, hire the architect to look at the range plan, I think it would be worth at least exploring the idea.
Curious to see it.
And see what the, because, my hunch is that educated guess, it's gonna be way too expensive, and then,
Yeah.
as Catherine,
I
I
would
think you,
rather
like, what's the
use
value?
our
Yeah.
architect
Yeah.
time for the stuff that we want them to do.
Yeah.
Because, you know, 40,000 is gonna get eaten up real fast.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they bill $400 or
So-
$500 an hour. That's not a lot of time
So,
Yep.
we're
No.
gonna say no to the children's room?
We put a big
move?
X through it.
to the,
Well, rather than the children's room, let's say rather than move the move part, reevaluate the children's room and just leave it at that.
But it says to the entrance, aren't we doing that over here on the
Yeah.
short term anyway?
Right, I would add it
We're
to
talking-
short term though, instead of making
Okay.
it long term.
Then let's do that.
So get rid of
Where it says children.
it. Down here, reevaluate, reevaluate, yeah.
Enclose the children.
And close them. Fence them in.
So we'd remove item 1 entirely.
Yeah.
Item 2, interactive play
We gotta-
area.
We gotta look at that.
I like interactive play, but my concern would be is it static? Is it gonna be there for somebody's, you know, it's permanent, but it's something that's gonna be there for 20 years. Kids get bored, they like to change.
Well, if you
Yeah,
have one of
but they
those
have
walls,
walls.
they change that stuff on the walls all the
I
time.
mean, to me, it's gotta be something that
You
is
can-
flexible
Yeah.
and can change over
Right.
time, but.
That was
I
in
don't-
here, right? Like
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
think
Well, that just